What is the most unbelievable instance of computer illiteracy you've ever witnessed? Story 1. I used to work as the tech guy in a high school. One day, the head teacher's secretary called me to reception because the fax machine wasn't working. I had a look at it, and it seemed to work fine, so I asked her to show me what she was doing when the fault occurred. So she put the document in the slot, typed in the number, the machine whirred up and the document popped out the other side. As normal, you see, she said. No, not really, what's the problem? She looked at me like I was a complete and utter moron, snatched up the document and started waving it at me saying it's still here, and that's why I had to explain to a grown woman that a fax machine isn't a teleportation device. Edit spelling, grammar. I honestly didn't expect this story to be so popular. Thanks everyone. Story 2. My grandfather, bless him, in his late 70s just learning how to use a computer, and he would enjoy spending an hour or so in the evenings getting creative using the Paint app on his laptop. I was talking to him about replacing the ink in his printer as it was running low. Then a look of horror came over him and he leaned in closely and said, I've been using the Paint app on my computer, how much ink have I been wasting? He thought using the Paint on his computer without printing it was using up his expensive ink. Bless him, that still makes me laugh. Story 3. I work as tech support at a university, so computer illiteracy keeps me employed. There's one professor I've had to teach to right-click on multiple occasions. Also, just last week a woman corporate client called about a strange message on her computer. Outlook had detected she moved time zones and asked if she wanted her laptop to change times to reflect her new location. It's just asking if you want to adjust your email to your new time zone since you're an hour earlier here, so we'll get my emails an hour earlier. Some people really think computers are magic. Story 4. I worked in tech support in the mid-90s at a company where computers for admins and sales were a relatively new thing, so I have a million stories. Got a call from an employee insisting her new, tested mouse wasn't working. Went through all the questions. Is it plugged in? Do you see the arrow on the screen? And could hear her clicking, so I knew she was at least doing something. I finally went to her desk and saw that she was using her mouse up against the monitor, trying to click on things right on the screen instead of understanding the mousepad on the desk, cursor on the screen setup. Story 5. My uncle has step-by-step instructions for accessing his email, which is the only thing he does on his computer. Anytime he makes a mistake, he shuts down the computer and starts over. He also moves the mouse into position, takes his hand off completely, then pokes the button very carefully. Story 6. My mom seriously thinks she can only access email from the computer on which it was set up. She has created a new email address for each new computer she got. Edit she. Story 7. I work with a guy who for 2 months and countless visits from our IT guy claimed that his computer was still going slow, so the IT guy set a dead computer tower, which isn't even plugged into anything, next to the one that he was using, and now my coworker says it goes twice as fast. Story 8. In recent memory, I can recall an instance where my mom had a recipe open in Chrome, and I wanted to show her a YouTube video. I opened another tab in the browser and she got mad at me because she thought I deleted the recipe. Story 9. The first email my dad sent me when I went away to college, and the first email he ever wrote, didn't have any spaces in it. It was just one long word dotted with occasional punctuation. He didn't know what the spacebar was and thought the computer would just add the spaces automatically. It was hilariously adorable, and every time I think about it I get a little sad I didn't print out and frame that email. Story 10. Customer call. Hi, my computer isn't working. Me, okay, what happens when you try turning it on? Customer, nothing. Me, can you check to see if it's still plugged into the outlet? Customer, I dunno, it's pretty dark back there. Me, can you turn on a light? Customer, nope, the power's out. Story 11. A coworker of mine, an older gentleman, knew how to use Excel, but nothing else. When he needed to type up a document, instead of opening up a word processor, he would open up Excel and just type his document into one cell that he enlarged to the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Story 12. Coworker asked me to turn the clicking sound off on her keyboard. She thought that the sound keys make when you type on the computer keyboard was a sound effect similar to when you type on a cell phone. Nope, it was her long fake nails making the keys clack. She refused to believe me, so I told her to call tech support. No idea how they handled it, lol. Story 13. Back in the days of MS-DOS and the good old Windows 3.1, my uncle picked up a new PC, a powerhouse of the time, had never had a PC, had been a Commodore 64 guy for a long time though. Anyway, I visited my grandparents where he also lived, and he showed me his computer. I was in awe, it was so good compared to my own. I played a game of Strife and after went out to play. Later that day I'm asked by my grandmother, what did you do to your uncle's computer? I don't know what she's talking about and go to talk to him. He's mad. The thing won't boot and I broke it, get it to boot and check out the HDD. It's in shambles. I ask, what were you doing when it stopped working? Deleting files you put on there. I don't need your garbage on my machine. Head deleted random files from the OS until it stopped working. Long story shorter, in one day I reinstalled DOS and Windows on that thing 6 times. Yes, he kept doing it and wouldn't listen when I told him he couldn't just do that. I never touched his PC again afterwards. He still brings up the time I broke his new computer. Story 14. I've mentioned this before. I went back to college last year, and I am stunned by the computer illiteracy of some of these kids in their late teens, early 20s. Yeah, I'm an ex-IT person, but I adapted to this life. You were born into it. I'm not just talking about not knowing how to use, let alone create templates in Word, or how to save files to a thumb drive, Or back up your data, though that's crazy too, or no, there are other browsers besides Explorer. It's way worse. I told one person that their list of citations needs to be alphabetical, and rather than mark it and drag and drop they started retyping it. Heck, a lot of them didn't know how to cut and paste in general. I've seen people who didn't know you can hold down Shift to get an uppercase letter. They'd activate caps lock, hit the letter, deactivate caps lock. And one person would write entire essays on paper, then type them in, then if they needed to edit it, they'd do it on the original paper version and then type the entire thing back in from scratch. Edit. I'm getting many replies about the caps lock thing. Apparently a lot of people do that. Note that I'm not talking about people who do this in the flow of typing. I'm talking about stop typing, hit caps lock, hit one key, hit caps lock, resume typing kind of situations. Story 15. I worked with a woman who would tell me her web page was wrong. She didn't have a web page. It took me a while to figure out she meant her desktop display. Her excuse, I can't remember all those terms, you'll just have to know what I call stuff. I had to do support for the whole office. She thought it was perfectly reasonable that I should learn 12 different names for common computer things instead of her having to learn the correct ones. She's also dead now, and I don't care. Story 16. I'm a graphic designer, and I once had a client sitting next to me whilst designing her a logo. I zoomed into the logo on screen and she said, "Oh no, not that big." I explained it wasn't going to be that big and I was just making it bigger on the screen so it's easier to edit. Thought she understood until I zoomed out a few minutes later, and she said, "Oh yes, that's a better size." Story 17. 1999596. We, a small consultancy, got a call from an accountant who told us that his new PC system's HDD was reporting as full and he felt it was unlikely. I was sent to investigate and found that his HDD was indeed returning errors. I asked him what software he used and he said MS-DOS. I rephrased and asked what software he used for his accounting. He said again MS-DOS. I asked him to show me and he began, straightforwardly enough at the time, by navigating to a working subdirectory. He then proceeded to create file after file after file. It turned out he was using DOS as a filing system, creating individual records by creating corresponding files. He wrote nothing in the file, all his information was contained in his choice of file names and extensions. It all worked, it did what he wanted, but it had put him at the limit of what a DOS file system could handle at the time. Story 18. I sincerely hope my wife does not have a secret Reddit account, or for that matter, does not know my Reddit account. If she does find this out, he'll probably not be alive. Whenever we had internet issues, she would out the RJ45 from the cable modem, blow air into it 10 times and place it back into the modem. I never understood this ritual, until one day I took up the courage to ask why. The response I got was that, since she was accessing too many sites, there could be a blockage in the modem. I did ask her the same question several times over the course of the next few years. Story 19. Retired coworker which would forget all her passwords about 3 times a week. Also, her phone had a bunch of memory cleaner and battery saver apps which actually slowed it down and made the battery discharge faster. Story 20. End user thought she could reboot her machine by turning the monitor off. I got curious when it only took 2 seconds for her to restart, so I had to walk to her cube to see for myself. Story 21. I work in recruiting and I will often ask people to email me over their resume. Not only will many people not know how to do that, some will try and fail miserably. I had one guy, he was older, tell me multiple times that he has his resume saved in his email and that I can go log onto his email and go get it. I said no, that's not how email works, you have to send it to where you want it to go. He proceeded to tell me his email address and say again that I can just log on and get it. Wasn't worth trying to explain anymore. Another woman told me that she can't email her resume to me because her email address is com and ours is company name. Com and they're different. I explained to her that the domain name doesn't matter. You can email to any domain names that you want, they're just different companies and will still receive the email. She tried to argue with me saying that she has and only can send to other. I again tried to explain and told her how just like calling people with different area codes, it's just a way to classify and you can send an email to any email address. She wasn't getting it, we never got her resume. Story 22. Work in IT for a large corporation and I had a senior lawyer, mid-30s at my company, complained that the Wi-Fi wasn't working when she left the building. Needless to say I was staggered by the ineptitude. Story 23. Not necessarily computer illiteracy, but I have an old man come by my work once a week and has me unlock his iPhone. He doesn't have a password, just needs to swipe right to unlock the screen, don't even know what he does with it afterwards. Story 24. When my friend's mum finds an error in her text, she will delete everything she has written since the mistake, correct it, and then retype the whole thing. Story 25. When my granddad got a new computer, he set everything up, and wanted to plug in the mouse into the HDMI port. He jammed it in, it didn't work, he jammed it the other way around. It obviously didn't work, so he stripped the USB cable, and soldered it into the port. Story 26. My mom came to me and told me that a window had appeared on the computer. I went with her to see what it was. There was nothing there. I asked her why there wasn't anything there, and she told me that she had closed it. I told her that there was nothing I could do, and to leave it open if it came back. Next day she comes and tells me that it came back, so I go with her to her computer. There's nothing there, she had closed it again. I repeat what I had told her the day before, and she starts getting annoyed at me for not being able to fix her computer. This keeps happening and I grow savvy. One day when she comes to me I ask if she closed it again, which she did. I refuse to drop what I'm doing to come look at her wallpaper, and she gets angry at me for being unhelpful. After this she stops coming to me. If I had to guess I'd say she went to my dad to get him to fix the computer and got the same message from him. Story 27. Not an instance, but an ongoing series of what is wrong with you. Mid-90s. Early days of using the web to interface data with outside entities. I developed a process at work to interface our mainframe with an external print service. It requires the user to download the mainframe files, sign on to the remote site, and upload the files. The process takes place 7 or 8 times a year. I documented it step by step. I explained it to my manager and the user's manager. They agreed the process is logical and straightforward. I showed the end users how to do it. They seemed to understand. 3 years later and I was still changing the documentation to account for all the ways the users found to not follow the step-by-step documentation. Nearly every billing run was screwed up because they found new and interesting ways to click with the left button, no, not the right. Why are you double-clicking? Why are you double-clicking so slow? Why are you double right-clicking? Mashing the mouse button does not make the computer understand what you meant to do. Try not to move the mouse halfway across the screen when you click. Oh, that last one should have been an acceptable defense for justifiable homicide. All these issues result in bizarre web form behavior. And that was just the clicking. If they got the clicking right, it was what they were clicking inside and outside the browser window that screwed it all up. By the way, the process takes place in the middle of the night and they would either call me read wake so I could walk them through it bad, or not call me and our billing would be delayed worse because the billing data was dated. Guess who had to do damage control on the data to fix the issue? 20 years later and one of the users still calls me to walk him through it. At least now, the process takes place during the workday and I can be on hand to help. Walked into my boss office and she was holding a magnifying glass to her computer screen. She's such a dear thing. Story 28. When I got my first optical mouse I spent a whole afternoon trying to get it to work. Downloading drivers, rebooting, googling tech websites, repeat. Turned out it wouldn't work on a black table. Story 29. Myself. A year ago, I moved into a new house and while setting my computer back up I stupidly didn't plug my monitor into the video card. I spent 3 days trying to figure out why my games looked like and almost bought a new card altogether. Ugh. Story 30. I work in government IT. I am not help desk, but our help desk is awful so people often come to me with the stupid questions. Suffice to say, everyone is 100 computer retarded. One of my users was once enraged that the MSN homepage changed and insisted I needed to change it back to the old design. When we deployed Office 2013, my phone rang off the hook from people claiming they didn't have email, Word, PowerPoint, etc. anymore. Really it was just that the desktop shortcut was gone. When I tell them that the shortcut is gone and you need to click the start button and find it in their programs to start it for the first time, they were blown away that other programs exist on their computer that don't have big magical buttons on their desktop. I was really depressed for a while about this entire concept. I am surrounded by people who think a computer is just one set screen with big buttons on it to press and that's it. People call all the time saying their computer is broken. I ask if it's turned on, they say no. I have users who cannot remember a series of digits on a day-to-day basis, so they write down their RSA pin on the plastic RSA token. I know of several users who do not email. Their secretaries are tasked with printing out every email they receive, placing them in piles on the user's desk. The user writes back in pen on the email. The secretary types it up as a response to the email and sends it. Your tax dollars at work, folks. Bonus round for my mental health. One of my coworkers that does IT support does not know how to replace the printer ink and instead books a Lexmark Tech every time a cartridge needs installation. A Lexmark Tech out of warranty is about $450 for 30 minutes. Another office hired a head of IT and he came to my office to shadow or something. He tried to book a 30-minute meeting with me so I could teach him how to computer code some software after hearing about some script I wrote. He fully expected to learn to code in 30 minutes. Story 31. It was me, a long time ago before webcams were common. I ended up at this web page where it said something like there was a new technology where the screen would take your picture and then show it to you. So I went and brushed my hair, changed my shirt and came back to get my picture. I smiled and pressed the button. It made like a flash and then said to wait up to 5 minutes for the result. I waited patiently as I saw the picture slowly loading, only to finally reveal a picture of an orangutan, my first case of being trolled by the internet. Story 32. I once witnessed the owner of a fairly large company work the mouse while a subordinate worked the keyboard. They were older gentlemen. It was adorable, like two toddlers working on a Rubik's Cube. Story 33. At the place I work at, this older woman that doesn't understand the concept of tabs will literally use multiple computers in our computer lab for each window she opens. I've explained to her what tabs are probably like 5 times and she still refuses to understand. Story 34. I don't know if this fits, but a young lady in the office complained her computer would randomly lose power while she was working. After a lot of effort to solve the problem, including changing out the computer, the problem was determined to be her height. Since she was short, she used the power strip to prop her feet, and kept accidentally pushing the power button. Story 35. A couple years ago, my mom got my dad an iPad for his birthday. As he was unwrapping the box on the side, my dad stated, a potty in the most confused tone because he had no idea what he was getting. He had unwrapped the box upside down and was just reading iPad upside down. I cried from laughing for a good 20 minutes. To this day, it still makes me laugh to think about him saying that. Story 36. I was remotely helping an administrative assistant with a computer problem. It was easiest for me to just connect to her C-Share and place a shortcut on her desktop that she could double-click to get me connected interactively. When I told her over the phone that I just placed a shortcut on her desktop, I could hear her shuffling around through the papers on her desk looking for it. Story 37. Some 18 years ago, Kevin was having a new database program deployed in his auto body shop. The technician was showing him how to navigate around the program when Kevin gave him a pad of paper and pen and asked the tech to write down the steps he needed to know. The tech took the pad and pen and began to write. In just a few seconds he handed the pad back to Kevin. Somewhat bewildered, Kevin grasped the paper and looked down to see 3 words: read the screen. Story 38. We had a bad experience hiring a computer programmer for my company once. We ended up using a recruiter due to a lack of initial candidates. Most of the new candidates weren't local, so we held Skype video interviews. One of the applicants couldn't get his camera working for the technical interview, so we did a phone interview. He aced all of our technical questions, and we ended up hiring him. The guy moves and shows up for his first day. As part of the orientation he has to read some documents on a shared drive. When told to find them on the already mapped network drive, he looked confused. He was walked through that, but then he was told to open an app, and couldn't find it. Since there were no shortcuts on his desktop, he was told to open the Start menu and search for it. He failed at opening the Start menu. A computer programmer couldn't use basic Windows functions. He was terminated a short time later. It seems like the recruiting company provided a stand-in for the interview process, so they paid us back for our expenses and we don't use them anymore. Story 39. My conservative religious dad apparently doesn't know that things you say in Facebook groups are visible to others, and show up on their news feeds. Some group he was in asked who here likes licking, to which my dad replies, love it. After I picked my stomach up from the floor and wiped the vomit from my chin, imagining all of his church friends reading, that caused me no small amount of twisted pleasure. I thought about liking the comment to let him know, but cowardice won the day and I let things be, not that I didn't take screenshots to save it for posterity. Story 40. This may not fit the question, but when I worked in support for a TV company, a lady called up and said her DVD player wasn't working. Okay, no problem, I can help you with that. Are there any words or letters on the front of the player? It says Sony. Hey, race their number. Story 41. Years ago I was working in an accounting office. Grumpy old coworker in cube next to me. I swapped his mouse ball with a large grape. Oddly enough it worked well for a couple of days, but as it started to shrink the cursor would jump around the screen. He would swear at the computer, slam the mouse and keyboard, but never called IT because he was too proud to admit he didn't know how to fix it. After like 10 days it was barely working. I would watch him try to move the mouse slow as, like 1 centimeter at a time, and the cursor would jump across the screen and he would start swearing about the company being too cheap to buy anything except this Chinese. Eventually, he called IT and they got a good laugh. Dude was sincerely pissed, and fortunately I wasn't his first suspect. Story 42. My college professor was going to bring up her PowerPoint slide and said she was worried Black Friday would make the internet slow. I have another, which some people have argued with, but I'll say it anyway. My grandma lives in this brick house and her connection is pretty bad on her phone talking to me, so she says, hold on, I need to go open up the door and let some Wi-Fi in. Story 43. I told my little brother to just extract a file to install it. What is a file? What is a file? WTF, you can make Minecraft mod packs. How TF did you not know what a file was? Story 44. User hollers at me from the other room to come help him with his computer. Assuming from his tone that he is in dire need of assistance, I stop my time-sensitive work and walk somewhat reluctantly into the office. He stares at me, a look of anger mixed with helpless confusion in his eyes. My numbers don't work, he says. Your what? My numbers, they don't work. He's pointing at the keyboard, looking at me like I just asked the dumbest question in the world. I walk over to the computer, highlight a random text field, and tap the 1 key in the number row. A 1 appears in the text box as I give the internationally recognized facial expression denoting you sure. Seems okay to me. This only increases the user's anger and confusion. And the other numbers. His tone now carries the implication that I am worthless to the point of being a detriment to society at large. My eyes go to the keyboard, noting that the numlock LED is in fact dark, and back to the user's anger-filled eyes. Not breaking this stare, I very slowly reach down and tap the numlock key, wait 1 Mississippi, and tap the 5 key on the numpad. As the numeric character pops up in the text box on screen, I remove my hand from the keyboard, shake my head, and return to being productive. Editor's note: it should also be noted that I was not doing IT work professionally at this time. My obvious lack of empathy for this particular user was derived from a very long and combative relationship in a previous career, with this episode taking place after I had overdrawn my account at the First National Bank of, and thusly had none left to give. I used to work in IT at a high school around 2011, and got a few amazing ones. One teacher called me in for an unrelated issue. The setup was a really crappy one where the tower was right next to the mousepad. I asked her to click something for me. She moved the mouse to the right until it touched the tower, and then instead of readjusting her position, she went up the side of the tower with the mouse, clicked, then held it there. I tried to act professional and not laugh, but I have no doubts that my eyes were sticking out of my head while I strained to not die laughing right there. These people educate your children. Story 45. My nan is 75 and for her birthday we decided to get her an iPad. She quickly ran to her little supply cupboard and pulled out her Norton Internet security card and excitedly asked if she needed to install it on her iPad. Bless her cotton socks. Story 46. So I was checking this guy's internet and I asked him to show me his modem. He goes to another room and comes back with his mouse. I had to leave the room because I couldn't stop laughing. Story 47. Did entry-level tech support for Geek Squad some years ago and quit. One of the reasons why was a 70-minute conversation I had with an 89-year-old man wherein I tried to help him find the start button on his desktop. Suicide never looked better. Story 48. My grandma, bless her heart, once blew up my phone at work. Something like 4 to 6 calls in the span of a half hour. I thought someone died. I shoot my boss a quick IM and told her I needed to be AFK for a quick personal situation. She had minimized her AOL email window and couldn't find it on her desktop taskbar, and was convinced that she had permanently deleted her AOL account and all emails associated with it. Story 49. I love my dad, but it still boggles my mind how computer illiterate he can be. Of all the situations, I'd say this one takes the cake. His laptop needed to be fixed for some reason, so he was using my sister's laptop at the time. He calls me up to tell me he can't find his files. Confused, I asked him to explain what he means. He says that he always keeps all of his folders files on his desktop, but that none of them are there. I say to him, but you're using your daughter's computer, how would you have access to files on your computer? There's a brief moment of silence, until he says to me, but the files are on my desktop, shouldn't I be able to access them now? Suffice to say, I had to explain a few things to him, then most of which just went in one ear and out the other. Story 50. We got our first computer when I was 13, I was the only one in the house with computer experience, and it wasn't a lot. I don't remember what exactly my father wanted me to do to it, but it was something along the lines of rewriting the OS Win98 to make a working man's computer. He was very upset that I wasn't willing to try and hack Windows. Story 51. Way back in the day when my family got our first computer, we were all learning how to use it. This was in the early 90s and PCs didn't do a whole lot. Ours was basically a glorified word processor with memory and solitaire. One day my mom was writing some poetry in Word and after having saved the file decided it was embarrassing or something and wanted to delete it. Unable to find the right file, she somehow ended up deleting some seriously crucial stuff and I ended up having to reinstall MS-DOS and Windows all over again, off of 3-5 disks. If I had to estimate how many disks this took, I'd say between 30 and my life. Story 52. I worked as a tech coordinator at a high school, so there were things that blew my mind every day. The worst one was when an older teacher deleted the internet from her computer. She actually put in a request to purchase a new computer for her room because she thought it was worthless with no internet. Fortunately, my principal told me to take a look at it. She had accidentally moved her desktop icon into the trash bin and was in disbelief that I fixed it. I got a couple dozen homemade cookies as thanks, so it wasn't all bad. Story 53. Not sure if it counts, but 10 years or so ago, when LimeWire, FrostWire, BearShare and Morpheus were the ways to download stuff before they went to, my brother wanted to get some music DJ software for free. He found the exe file through LimeWire and before launching it, a window popped up saying this file may contain viruses or harmful data. He installed it anyway, claiming it wouldn't be on the computer long enough for the virus to get on the computer. Well, it doesn't matter cause once you install said software, the damage is already done. Computer got adware and eventually crashed. Story 54. I have a coworker who made a PowerPoint presentation by taking pictures of her computer screen with her smartphone, emailing them to herself and then putting them in the presentation. Instead of using print screen or snipping tool, it was both hilarious and embarrassing. Edit. You could see the bezel on her laptop screen and some of her keyboard in every picture. Story 55. I was catching up on my computer training videos for a large retail store I work for. There was an older woman, I'd say late 50s, sitting at the only other computer doing training as well. All is quiet as we both relearn how to use common sense in the workplace. About 10 minutes go by and the woman exclaims, "What happened? Why did it all go? Can you help me?" I turned around and her screen was black. I tell her to move her mouse and it all comes back. "Oh, thank you much." Couldn't even be bothered to try to fix the problem. She just threw up her hands and immediately cried for help. Note that this woman also had to have another employee navigate to the training page as if she didn't know how to use a browser. Story 56. My friend worked in Microsoft tech support and had an old lady phone in. He had asked her to click at something, and she replied, "I can't." "Why not?" he asked. "I have come to the edge of the mouse pad. Lift the mouse up and put it back in the middle of the mouse pad and then start sliding it again to the right." "Oh, that is so handy." Story 57. When I set up my mom's first email account, she thought you could only type until the body box was full in the webmail interface. She didn't realize you could scroll the screen down to add more space to type, so all her emails ended with "okay, running out of space, I'll talk to you la," and she would literally type until she filled the box. Knowing what a blessing this was, I never corrected her. I was quite pissed when her friend showed her how to add more space, and also how to forward emails on the same day. Those were the good OL days. Story 58. People who believe using incognito tabs will prevent someone from spying upon them. Unbelievable, because this is not my granny. This is people who know at least about the existence of incognito navigation. Story 59. Since you put computer illiteracy in quotes, this is not computer related, just technology related. My grandmother was from the old country and never learned to speak English. She kept asking us to buy a TV that was made in the old country, so that she could watch TV shows in her native tongue. Story 60. Oh, I got one. I get these daily as I'm a sysadmin, but anyway, hey, race the best. This woman kept a shitty, creased blank piece of paper in her bag. If she ever needed to provide students with blank paper for classes, she would go up to the photocopier and copy the blank page to get more blank pages. Detailed story here. Story 61. I was the de facto IT guy at my last job, and one day the financial manager, the CEO's fiancée, asked me to come over and figure out why a program she was using wasn't working. I could see it was open on her start bar, and whenever I clicked on it, it would do the animation where it expands full size from the start bar icon. It was very clearly going to her second monitor, which was on, but covered in sticky notes. You could even see the outline of the window through the sticky notes. I took off one of them where the corner of the window was that has the name of the program, and walked away as she started taking the other sticky notes off. Edit story 2. My grandmother used to have one of those pre-built computers with an optical drive that didn't have a sliding tray, kind of like the ones in car stereos. She got a disc stuck because she tried to play the other side of the Enya CD, and something about the drive wouldn't detect that it did in fact have a CD in there already, so it wouldn't eject what was in there. She eventually threw the computer away with the CD still in it. Bonus part of the reason my mother got her this computer was because my grandmother had used her CD tray as a cup holder, bumped it, and when the tray retracted, it dumped the coffee on the floor, and it went in the fans.